Hello and welcome. And today I want to talk about, does nicotine help with long COVID and chronic fatigue? So I kept hearing about this and I saw a few websites about it, but I wanted to look at the research and I scoured the internet. So I mostly look at what's called PubMed, that's like published medical research. And I found one article. So all of these websites claiming nicotine helps long COVID, they all cite one research study. And that research study was observational and it had 4 patients in it with long COVID. The results were good, but this is not really transferable to say, hey, this is a treatment. And a lot of the websites that talk about this say that at the bottom, oh, this was observational studies. So the study was good and the outcomes were good, but it's 4 people, and it's one study, and I haven't seen anything more. So it's pretty interesting. Let me see if I can kind of explain to you. Oh, it really is very technical, what's happening. But basically, so what they think is happening is, well, we know this, that chronic fatigue and long COVID, part of it is there's pieces of the virus still that are attached to cells. And so what they think is what should attach where the virus is called acetylcholine. Um, but but what happens instead is the virus is there, and so there's something else called nicotine acetylcholine receptors. Um, and so what they think happens is the COVID virus binds to the nicotine acetylcholine receptors and it disrupts the neural signal. And so the theory is if nicotine itself can attach to those nicotine acetylcholine receptors, it can displace the virus and sort of get the body to rid of the virus. That's a very, very simplified explanation. Um, yeah, the virus blocks the the receptor site where we want acetylcholine to bind to that receptor site, but instead the virus is there. And so then what they think is the nicotine can bind to the virus and get it out of there, and then acetylcholine, which is what we want to bind to that receptor site, can bind, and then you can have normal neural function. Ooh, that was I think I explained that right. Don't quote me on it. We need a better scientist to explain this. This is taking me back to my undergrad cell biology, which was not my favorite class. Um, so this one study, it was pretty cool. The results, everyone got better, which was cool. So there was 4 patients, variety of ages. The youngest was 20 something and the oldest was 50. I think it was 1 female and 3 males. And they had a variety of symptoms. So they all had a positive COVID test at a certain point, and their long COVID was from months to over a year. So, and this study was published in 2023. So some of these people got COVID before the vaccine. It actually didn't say if they were vaccinated or not, but they got it in 2020 or 2021 is when they got the infection. So their symptoms were a variety of weakness, dizziness, difficulty breathing, difficulty sleeping, loss of taste and smell, chronic fatigue. And they all had a different combination of symptoms. And so what the study is they wore a nicotine patch, the lowest dose, which is 7.5 milligrams. They kept it on for 24 hours. Every day in the morning, they switched the patch. And I couldn't tell. It seems like they wore the patch from either 6 to 11 days. And they monitored their symptoms. So they had them track their symptoms starting 4 days before they wore the patch, and then every day. And I think is they wore it until they were symptom-free for 4 consecutive days. So I think that correlated to 6 to 11 days of wearing the nicotine patch. And they monitored their symptoms. So they had a scale of like 0 to 5. 5 is like severe. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 is like no symptom. So they each tracked all their symptoms from 4 days before the nicotine patch all the way through about, it seems like 19 to 26 days. And I'll link the study for sure that you can read it afterwards. And then they had no symptoms. All of their symptoms cleared by the time they finished this protocol. And then they followed up with each of the participants at either 3 or 6 months, and they still all were symptom free at the follow-up at 3 or 6 months later. So that's very promising. However, they didn't like expand on this study. And that's like what the authors say at the end is like, the next step would be a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial of this, which is like what they call the gold standard of science. So let me break that down for you. Double-blind means the people testing it don't know who has the nicotine patch and who has the placebo. So the participants don't know if they are getting the nicotine or the placebo, and the people testing the symptoms or monitoring the symptoms or following up don't know who got the nicotine patch and who got the placebo. So that's what double blind means. The researchers, the data collectors, and the participants don't know who's getting what. That way nobody has a bias of like, oh, I'm getting the placebo or I'm getting the medication. Even the researchers don't have a bias. And then, placebo-controlled means one group gets the nicotine patch in this case, and one group gets a placebo patch that doesn't have anything in it. So that's really the gold standard of research to do that kind of study to show like, okay, we need a larger number of people besides 4, and then to test the nicotine patch against placebo, to see maybe it was just a placebo effect. Like, I think I'm getting better, right? So that's what the authors say at the end of this study, but nobody's done the bigger study yet, which is kind of disappointing because that study was published in 2023, and I guess there's just not funding to study this, but this seems like it could potentially be a good treatment and promising, and also the side effects were minimal. So in the study, people had minimal side effects. One participant, I should also say this, none of these people were smokers, and they also had no comorbidities. So that's also a limitation of the study. These people were healthy, which when you look at who has chronic fatigue, long COVID, it's generally people who are healthy, young-ish, middle-aged, I guess, and like few comorbidities. Comorbidities means other like obesity, diabetes, heart disease, like other medical issues. So also we can't extrapolate to people with other medical issues, this was like a young, healthy population. The participants had mild COVID, meaning they weren't hospitalized for it, which really correlates to a lot of the like chronic fatigue, long COVID patients, and non-smokers, non-nicotine users. So that's sort of the population they studied or that participated, these 4 participants. And so there was one person that used a 15 milligram patch on accident, and he took it off after 10 hours because he had a lot of nausea and diarrhea, and like the symptoms were intolerable. So the goal of this was to keep the patch continuously, and then switch it to a new patch every 24 hours. So that way you're getting like a steady dose of the nicotine. But the one guy, he used the wrong dose, but then he like used the right dosage and continued the protocol, and he got better. So, I mean, it seems promising, but like I said, you'll see this all over the internet, and there's one small study, one observational study. So the evidence is not strong. The other thing that they showed is people didn't have withdrawal symptoms from the like the nicotine patch. So I'll also tell you, like, I looked and looked in medical research that I know of where to look. And obviously this is just me Googling it, but to looking at actual like research articles, not just people's blogs or opinions. And there is a lot of research about nicotine and these nicotine acetylcholine receptors and how potentially nicotine can be a treatment for like other things, but I didn't really find anything. Actually, like I found some articles saying like nicotine patch might help ulcerative colitis, which is interesting to me as a pelvic floor therapist. I see a lot of patients with different forms of colitis, obviously in the chronic phase, not the acute phase. But I didn't really dig into that research yet. But interesting that there's a lot of research about this. I read some articles like really into like the cellular biology and what's happening in all the receptors, and I could kind of follow it and understand it. But basically, yeah, they are looking at this. And so one thing I found in the other articles was that so I've kind of seen conflicting things in the research. Some things show smokers had less likely to get COVID, but also some research showed smokers had more severe hospitalized COVID and higher risk of death. So it's all kind of based on the same theory. So these nicotine receptors, so kind of this one article showed like people that, not people, they did this in rats, animals, when they gave them nicotine and then introduced the COVID virus, they had a worse outcome, essentially. This is like very short form. Because of the like cell binding receptors that I mentioned earlier. And basically it sort of upregulates is what they call it. So like the nicotine introduced first upregulates the replication of the virus. Versus if people had the virus, if they introduced the virus first to the animal and then the nicotine, it has an inhibitory factor. So this is like cell biology. I have like a very basic understanding of cell biology and all this stuff. It's definitely not my forte, but certain things will upregulate and they'll like make things take off, and certain things will downregulate. And sometimes the same thing can do both, depending on like what else is introduced with it. That's kind of what I got from it, and that's like the very basic understanding I have of it is the nicotine is trying to bind with the virus that's blocking what should bind there to help regulate the neural receptors and the neural modulators. What am I trying to say? The neural signals. And so that's the theory behind it. And I came across a lot of studies that studied the like cellular biology and the hypothesis of this, but the only human study was that one. So I'm not sure if anyone's studying this. It seems like a plausible thing. If the side effects are minimal, there's no nicotine addiction or withdrawal afterwards, and it's a pretty short protocol, it seems like. So it seems promising, but the research is minimal, and everyone just cites this one article that's not strong evidence. It had good outcomes, but it's not strong evidence. So I don't know, it kind of convinces me like maybe this is worth trying, and it kind of doesn't because the research isn't strong. But when I think about the research I read about getting another vaccine, because that's sort of the same theory as like to create an immune response to clear out the virus. So sort of working in a different way, I think at the cellular level, but overall the same philosophy. But the research on getting another COVID vaccine didn't show a significant difference between those who got another COVID vaccine and those who didn't. And their symptoms 6 months later. But also that research seems to be on people that got the COVID infection before they got any COVID vaccines. And this one didn't really state. It also might be the same because the people got their infection in 2020 or 2021. So it might also be the same, but it didn't really state if they had vaccination or not. So that's the research that I've read so far. Potentially promising, but not really strong evidence. Anyway, let me know if you have any questions, and if you're a scientist and you can explain this better, or you have a video that explains the cell biology better, let me know. I'm happy to link it. All right, good luck to all of you like long COVID people. Hopefully one day we will have treatments and answers, and hopefully your symptoms get better.